Evening, everybody. How we all doing? A little bit of a disaster there. I just rushed back to me seat. The wife just phoned me and told me she's left her house keys somewhere. So throw them outside office door quickly. Blooming heck. There we go. So hope you're all well. Back for, I can't even know which episode it is. Oh, episode 58. There we go. Wow, remarkable. So that's over a full year's worth of episodes. That's quite remarkable. That is incredible. So hope everything's well with all of your ponds. And it looked like we was getting a bit of sunshine, and then all of a sudden, massive step backwards again today. So spring's proving to be quite an interesting one for sure. Have got a guest on this evening as well. One of our regular viewers, Marston, has decided to actually come on and fire some questions in. He's normally quite proactive in firing them in of an evening. And in his words, he's here for the masses, for you guys to fire it from your angle, as opposed to the kind of higher end show scene stuff. I can be a little bit guilty of heading off in that direction sometimes, but that's, ultimately where a lot of my experience and passion lies, and try to dilute it down as much as I can for everyone. So there we have it. Been quite busy on the Koi Talk side this week, as well as up at the farm. I've been having a check on the Secret Sankey so far. Looking absolutely amazing. I think there's a couple now touching 35 cm in that pond already. It's just bonkers, and the body is looking absolutely pucker on them. So dead happy with those. And if you are watching and you've not got your ticket yet, then we've still got plenty available over on the website for our live event over at Newark Showground, the Secret Sankey Showdown Part 2 at the end of May. So you can get them over on the Koi Talk website, and we'd love for you to attend and make the event as good as it can possibly be. So, in other news, Koi Talk lovers, the mugs, I am going to discuss them on the Koi Talk Live tomorrow. But the mugs are going to be available from 8 p.m, I believe it is, tomorrow evening. So get them in, folks. They look the business. They look good. And there'll be nothing better than your morning cuppa with at the side of your pond with one of those bad boys. So happy days. So as for anything else, I've got a bit of news for you, which I'll say now and at the end of the live. A few of you may be saddened to hear this, and actually that's just reminded me of obviously what's happened to Keith Holmes this week from Koi Water Barn. Absolutely saddening news. He's been in the job a mega long time, certainly gave his all to it. So I was pretty shocked when I heard that, and thoughts and feelings go to his family as well on that one. Moving on from that, so we're kind of going to be having a bit of a reschedule for the live events that we do. Obviously, we've got our auction, Koi Wholesale live auction on a Tuesday evening at 6:30. That's going to be staying as it is. The biggest change is going to come to this Wednesday night slot, where I'm actually going to be parking Question Time Live for a little while, and moving the Thursday night Koi Talk Live to this Wednesday slot that we do at 7 p.m. Just personally been finding it quite hard to keep pace with, feeling like I'm ready for a bit of a change with it as well, to be honest. The questions time stuff, I do like to keep things fresh and keep reinventing. So I've absolutely loved this stint. 58 episodes, it's been absolutely crazy, but every week on my Todd here for an hour, it can be quite hard and tough, to be honest with you. I'm loving the interaction with the other guys on the Koi Talk live episode that we're doing, and the dynamic that's bringing. So I really want to sort of push hard on that one for now. So Question Time Live is going to be dropped as of next week, and that slot is going to be filled with the Koi Talk Live on the Wednesday at 7 p.m. instead of the Thursday. So appreciate everyone who's been tuning in and supporting it. And we're not going away with the content and the help. we've just took a sort of different strategy and different approach to it, which as I'm finding a lot of the information is getting a little bit sort of repetitive along the way. So to make it kind of like a solid resource for people, we're actually looking. I've had the team looking back through all the old episodes at the minute and breaking down all the questions into individual videos for you all. So there'll be that reference point there all the time. And yeah, we're actually going to set something up as well through the Koi Talk site to give you a chance to send your information, your questions in, and then one way or another we'll address them. And obviously there's still the Thursday night slot. We have been doing a bit of a Q&A section for the last 15-20 minutes of that as well, where you've not just got myself, you've got everybody else everybody else's experience to draw on. So yeah, nothing major change, but I'm sure you'll appreciate it's a lot certainly on me as well. And the team to be doing it at the rate that we were. And I think there's just ways we can do everything more efficiently. So, yeah, there we are. I'll remind everybody. I've just seen that from Richard. Brilliant. If you're giving up an hour of Q&A, does that mean we get 2 hours of Koi Total Hour on a Wednesday instead? No, Richard, that's defeating the objective. But plenty more content on the channels to let's say be consuming and to still help people. And like I say, it's not like we're disappearing, just dialing it back a little bit and not saying it's over either. We'll certainly leave the concept there, which will more than likely get picked up again at a later point. So time wise, like I say, we'll keep it the same because I know it's very familiar for everyone, and we'll go from there. So, I'm going to bring in our guest, Marston in a minute. But in the meantime, please feel free to start firing in any questions you've got for our last live episode for a good while. And, I'll work through them. I'm going to have probably 15-20 minutes with Marston. And then, I'll get back to the questions that you guys have got. So let's bring him in. Evening, buddy. How you doing?
Not too bad, bud. I just hope that I'm not that crap that you've moved it to another night or cancelled it altogether.
Oh, buddy, no.
Now.
I know you've been a very, very loyal viewer for a good while. So thank you for that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background as a koi keeper?
I've had koi for near enough all my life. I started when I was 9, and then, like everybody, I put it in a pond. 2 weeks later, it's belly up. So, and then I was lucky. My friend's dad kept fish, and he told me about filtration, and that was a marvel. I could actually keep him for a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
And now my fish, I don't show. I've got fish out there which I can go to, I can sit with. I have major medical problems, but when I'm with them, I'm not in pain.
Yeah,
and it's fantastic, and I do. When I come on here first, I thought this isn't for me, because it's all about show koi. I know there's a lot about show koi on it and everything, but there's also a lot for other people like myself.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be. And I'm here today just so everybody knows there isn't a stupid question. Mind you, I might ask a couple, but there you go. But, so stop talking about it and come on and
there we go.
Talk about it,
Absolutely.
Everybody knows what it's like. So, yeah.
That's what I've been saying. So many people tune in every week, but as I don't know if it's everybody's just camera shy or what, but it's certainly nice when you can have some interaction. I think you can get into more of an in-depth conversation about something.
Yeah, and with everybody take a screenshot of mine and put it in their door, and they'll never get any cold callers or robbery ever again. So it works out for everyone, doesn't it?
Brilliant. So, what would you like to ask me?
Right, you started Koi Wholesale at a very early age.
Yep.
You must have had some help, and now I understand that your father has been in fish for quite a while.
Yeah.
But what what are the worst parts and the worst parts of doing it?
Oh, now there's a question. I weren't expecting that one, I must say. So yeah, when I started, I'm trying to think of the numbers now. I think I know Steve's in background. I think it's 12 or 13 years. I lose track, to be honest with you. I think I was in my early 20s when I started Koi Wholesale together with my dad. So we started together, and I think he was 55% shareholder. I was 45. We basically put kind of those proportionate amounts into the first batch of stock that started the business. Obviously, prior to that, I'd already had 3 years with my first business venture, which was called Koi Growers. That was a retail operation focusing on high-end koi. And being completely frank about it, complete and utter business naivety from me was part of the demise of that, led by a harsh learning lesson that there is not the kind of company that I wanted to grow cannot be built off the back of just selling high-end koi. There's not the market there for it. The whole kind of way that business works, I think, is only suited to a sort of hobby level business, unless you can even that kind of business scaled up to the level of Narita Koi Farm. He's still got a very, very successful kind of wholesale operation running underneath it. It's kind of like all the glitz and the glamour of the high end fish is the icing on the cake, but the cake underneath it all is the wholesale operation. So obviously, there's prior to that, I spent all the time working in my dad's shop. We'd also together from a young age, I'd been involved in all of the building work, a lot of very hard manual graft over the years, actually physically building the ponds, mixing concrete, you name it, building ponds in the middle of harsh winters. It was some pretty some character building stuff, to say the least. So my dad had his shop for about 16, 17 years, I think, overall, and it was a great place to grow up in and learn from, because still to this day, you know, I think the learning experience I've got, bearing in mind it was an aquatic shop that specialized in koi. So as well as having all the koi, I was selling goldfish, tropical fish, marine fish at times, absolutely everything. So you got a really broad spectrum of learning, because not only was I selling them, they were needing to be looked after, they were being imported. You're learning about all the little, all the little characteristics and techniques for settling down different fish. Certainly when you move into the aquarium world, completely fascinating. But the biggest thing I picked up, and it's a focus my dad always had, was on customer care and honesty and taking care of customers. And that mindset was very quickly sort of reaffirmed when I met Fujo when I was 13 years old. He had a very similar mindset as well. You know, he was always thinking a bit differently and really cared about customer service and maintaining customers through making them successful. So, you know, at that point, I've got people coming to the shop who were literally first-time fish keepers, never ever kept one in their life. And I saw that as our job to make them successful fish keepers for the good of the hobby. Ultimately, hopefully, to retain them as a long-time loyal customer to the business, but also for the good of the hobby, that, you know, when somebody new comes in, we need to retain people in order for the hobby to grow. And that was always the mindset. And obviously you learn to speak to people, despite how my knowledge was growing, my experience, the technical stuff that I was all learning. You have to learn to talk to people on a very, very basic level. And that's how I always spoke to people. It just naturally sort of came that way. If people wanted a more in-depth conversation, we could switch it up a bit. So that bit I'm forever grateful for, because it was great learning in a lot of different aspects. Like I say, I had these aspirations to do high-end retail, so started Koi Growers. And like I say, quite frankly, I fucked it up. There's no two ways about it. It was a big learning experience. But I'm glad it did happen, because like I say, I'd had these aspirations to deal only in high-end koi for so long at that point already. I think I was 18 when I started it, that I needed that harsh kind of lesson, to make me realize that what I wanted to build in future wasn't going to be in that. And we had this whopping big facility that we'd built, and I was only using such a small fraction of it for this operation. It just seemed like a complete and utter waste and counterintuitive to the way I like to do things. Like I say, you've seen on here, my focus is really about the fish first, so not really giving a monkeys about water clarity and all that type of stuff. Whereas when you're in that retail focused world, you've got to keep all of that perfect. I had that at the shop. You know, if you had the water in the main pot looking slightly off one day, people thought there was problems with the fish. And I know that still happens now at certain levels. So yeah, it was working counterintuitive to the way my head was kind of working. And obviously after me kind of ballsing that up, my dad would just had enough of the retail side, being frank about it. I mean, after 17 years, it's a good old slog. And he was ready for something different. And between us, we'd always kind of seen, being so involved in that side of the industry, that there was the service to koi dealers was so poor. So it was kind of like the options then were the wholesalers, where you had this cold, they just bought very low class fish. They were kept in industrial units, which were all quite cold. There was no kind of feeling to it. The process of buying, you know, if you wanted to go and hand pick, you got kind of heavily penalizing the price for it. It was just really broken. And then the only next step was to go to Japan. And when you look at that, the gap between it is absolutely huge, because even now going to Japan is not the right option for 90% of koi shops. So we thought, you know, I think we can do something with that and kind of bring a retail level of service to the wholesale side of the business. And that's exactly what we did. You know, we started up and I brought all the elements of how I'd learned to photograph fish properly, select fish, how we'd been raising fish to make them more competitively priced, all these elements. We made a really nice website that was better than any retailer's website, where there was loads of individual fish that dealers could literally sit at home, exactly what they wanted, and have them sent out. Seems simple now, but back then no one was even close to doing it.
No.
And that was the start of it, really, from there. So no, in regards to help, you know, we'd already built the facilities, and I'd played a massive part in that. And to be honest with you, yeah, we say I'd already ballsed up with the old venture before that. My dad just kind of liquidated everything down. We was both we were starting from scratch. If it wasn't for, obviously, we had the facilities, but even then they weren't at the level that they are today. So you know, we just went for it, and it was a slog of a start. I think my dad went unpaid for about 12 months during that start. I went unpaid for about 18 months as well. Obviously, he had bigger priorities than I did. I didn't really have any responsibilities or commitments back then, and it was just a hell of a slog. I mean, hell for leather. Talk about working. I mean, I was in a relationship at that point, but I don't know how she ever put up with me, because I was never there. You know, and that's even something, to be fair. Quite Steve would be testament to that, because Steve works. Actually used to live in a pub in a village nearby, and that's Steve now lives in that village. And when he's been in that pub and obviously mentioned he was working with me, that's pretty much the feedback that he got. It was just an absolute slog of a period to get it off the ground, and that's what we did. There was no cash injection. There was just this initial burst of the money we'd put into this one batch of stock, and we went from there. So yeah, it's been a fun journey.
So what was the best part then?
Best part. I've not really come up with the worst part either yet, have I?
Well, you just closed the shop, so you know, I don't think that's too good, do you?
No. I think to be honest, worst part being, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, about 3 years into the business, 4 years, I can't remember. Obviously, me and my dad had a few disagreements, which is quite
that's normal.
So we decided to obviously change things up, and I eventually bought him out of the business. I can't remember. I think that was after about 4 years into it, that change come. So, but not long after that, to be honest with you. It was around the time that the missus was pregnant with our first child. It was a really tough pregnancy, and yeah, I had a complete and utter meltdown, to be honest. Not many people know this. That's not something I really talk about very often, but I completely lost my marbles, telling you the truth. And yeah, there was a lot of damage sort of done to the business. And to be honest with you, if it weren't for good people around me, it probably wouldn't have still existed.
Yeah.
But it was a period I got myself through, got help. And yeah, you know, you come out the other side of it and you rebuild and you come back stronger. So probably that's the worst part of it. And if it wasn't for the sheer love of what I do, I think I probably would have just gave it all up at that point, to be honest with you. But I just
you shouldn't look at having a nervous breakdown or something like that as a downfall, because you got yourself up and you went again.
Yeah.
What makes you a better person?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, looking back at the time, to be honest with you, there was a lot of sort of shame around how I felt around it. But now it's something I talk about to anybody. I'll sit down and have a conversation with anybody about it, because it's just a massive, massive one of life's learning curves. Obviously, I've done a lot of all this very early on in my life as well. I mean, even now, I'm still only 32. There's a lot still to get figured out and suss out as I'm going along. But yeah, that's probably the worst part, because I had a massive, because of all the stress and everything going on, I had a massive disconnect from this thing that I'd loved passionately for so long. It was it was tough. So I'd say kind of worst part, possibly that period. And yeah, best part. I'd say the best part for me has probably been the last couple of years. So finally,
more fun out of it.
You what? Sorry.
You're getting more fun from it now.
Yeah, not necessarily that. It's just a load of things coming together. I think all of a sudden, just throughout business, because we forget the Koi side is so passive to me at times. I believe I probably could. I'll probably try doing it in my sleep as well. I actually have some of them weird dreams sometimes where I wake up like, oh, and Charlie goes, "What's happened?" I says, "I've just had a dream that I was falling in a pond." That's what she asked.
You need to see a doctor about that bit.
Yeah.
That's a bit too much. What is your brother's background?
What's what? Sorry.
What is your brother's background?
My brother.
I know it's not a good choice of character, because he took Lee Hatfield with him to go to Japan. So, you know,
So best part. I think these last couple of years, I managed to, as my kind of recruiting skills have improved. Because that was something throughout business that was a stumbling block for me for years. I've just managed to build a really good team around me, and you know, a lot of these projects, the YouTube stuff, I've been really, really engaged with. I absolutely love this and helping, advising, but I'm only allowed the time for this because of what we've managed to build. You know, the rest of the team around me helping support do it. So yeah, I think that's been the magazine, all that coming together, and actually now seeing that it's having a quite a profound impact on people and their koi keeping journeys. That to me is everything we ever wanted to achieve, and to know we're kind of getting there is pretty humbling.
Right, next one then.
Sorry, my brother's background. Ryan.
No, okay. I've asked you twice online, so I'll expect you to miss it again.
He started a little bit later in the business than me. He actually started working for me at Koi Wholesale for a number of years, and then again, just eventually we knew it wasn't something that was going to last. That brotherly love or tension, if you want to call it, and kind of butting heads and clashing. So yeah, he eventually went in. Kevin Bolton at Exclusively Koi had been a customer of mine for quite a while, and Ryan has sort of always looked after him and managed his account. And yeah, in the end, they decided to go into business together. So I mean, that's been a blossoming venture as well. Hats off to them for what they've done. It's really thriving, and they're doing some great stuff on the retail side of the fence. So it's all good. It's definitely in the family, to say the least.
What would I get from going to a koi show or people like me would get from going to a koi show?
You mean in respect of just visiting one, or you're taking your
Yeah,
fish to market?
without showing or anything. If you were at Newark next weekend, what would I get out of going to it? Bit like your growing on show sort of thing. Like, what did we get out of it?
So I think, yeah, to different, I think the Grow and Show one, the Secret Sankey event we've done, and certainly the part one, I think for everyone that attended that, there was a lot of that added value. We got a real personal level of interaction, I think was nice. The chance, because it's very difficult for us with the time we've got to do any kind of one-on-one stuff too much. So I think it was really nice to be able to interact on that level with quite a lot of people on the day. Obviously, that's different because they're also getting a fish involved on that. But if we take part two of that event, you know, again, it's going to be that interaction, that kind of, although there's going to be a lot more people than there was at part one, it's still going to be small in comparison. So we will get that personal interaction. There's going to be a lot of you know, nice learning opportunities on the day, and the chance to interact, see what's happened with them fish, and the community side of it. You know, I think that's what everyone loved. Part one show, there was a great group of people that come together and communicated and enjoyed the hobby amongst themselves for that day as well, which was really, really nice. And that's the spirit we want to bring to those sort of events that we're doing. Regards to the big koi shows, obviously it's an opportunity to see a lot of nice fish, which I always enjoy. You know, that's for me when I see the shows in Japan. It's a chance to see so many really good fish in one place that you can't deny. And regardless of what level of koi keeping you're at, you know, if you're into something, koi or anything, it's nice to be able to see, I think, the best of that industry kind of in one place and soak it all up. So I think that's always nice, and just seeing good fish, it's all a really good learning experience for sure. There's a lot of dealers there all in one place, which I think is always a nice touch. So you get a chance just to have a bit of a snippet and an insight into what these people are about, see what fish is on offer. You can more than often not pick a decent deal up on some dry goods as well, which has always been a popular thing for the shows. And let's face it, you've got, it's an opportunity to go and meet up with some people as well. And that's, for me, that big bit, the whole community side of koi keeping is the bit that really adds another dimension to it. So I think for me, that's what you take from it. The competition side, probably not so much. I don't think there's too much there. For the people who are competing, obviously that's an important side of it. But for everybody else, I think it's just nice to have these days out available. So go and meet up with people, interact with the people in the industry, and see some good fish. I think for what it costs to visit a koi show, it's more than worth it.
Yeah. Well, if you could go to only one breeder for the whole year, which one and why?
Oh God, are you talking
After you've got all your fish back off them, that is what your wife don't know about. But there you go. You know,
Are you talking personally or for the business?
for the business.
Oh God, I suppose I'd have to go then with getting the biggest level of diversity that I could if it was one place. So I'd have to pick Marahiro in that respect. Definitely. The guy is just a machine in what he produces: quality, quantity, variety, you name it. The guy's got it there. He's such an interesting character. So mistakenly, I think, put in the bracket of kind of like a more volume breeder, but that guy's a serious player in the koi world. So yeah, definitely that one. Personally, if it was me personally, I'd be inclined to say NND, just for the fact of it's like, you know, my Japanese family. So there's just so much. I get the whole mentality, and it's something I have lived and done already. Although Taniguchi would be a very, very close second to that one, to be honest. For sure.
What happens when a new colour of koi is born or credited or whatever, and when it's first shown, as it's got no pattern or colour standards, how does that koi get judged compared to everything else?
That one is definitely for Mr. Tate to answer tomorrow night, Marston. I'm not
He's
going to lie.
listening, but he isn't answering. So
Yeah.
no,
No, he needs to remember that one. Yeah, it's up for one of them to make to research it and come up with the standards. I believe from what he's sort of mentioned in the past. I know it's something he spoke about, but that's not a world I've entered into. I can't profess to knowing too much about how they operate, and I think up until Alan starting to be more open, it's been a bit of a dark art that none of them have really wanted to speak about. Therefore, none of us really learn. And as a result of that, we're all kind of left at the time at a lot of these shows wondering what the hell, has happened and why certain judging decisions have been made. I got some time to spend with Alan at the Great British Koi Show last year because I was perplexed at some of the judging decisions based on me walking around and what I considered to be the best quality fish, not getting the awards I felt they should have done, then understanding straight away from their perspective what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And that was a big moment for me. It's like I still couldn't get my head around it because ultimately I'm going, well, that's all good and well that you're looking at that, but that fish there that didn't win should have done because it's the best fish, full stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know Alan's dead keen to keep sharing as much as possible in that respect, so people can understand more about it. Because I believe through more understanding, it will encourage more people into that side of the hobby. So fingers crossed.
I used to keep and breed budgerigars, and I used to breed over 400 a year.
Wow.
Right? And it was just to get a numbers game to get 5 good ones, to go on show. Then you have to keep some of them, the brothers and sisters, because the show one may not breed.
Yep.
And that's where in budgerigar, it goes under any other colour until there's a standard set for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's that in there, but yeah.
Come, feel free to fire that one in. I presume you'll be joining us tomorrow night, so fire that one in, and we'll let Alan.
But he'll be free on because I've already seen him come out and say good evening, all. So yeah.
Brilliant. Right, have you got one? Have you got one more for me then, buddy? Before I start ripping into some of the other questions.
How much would it cost to buy a koi in Japan to win over here?
That's a good one as well. Believe it or not, you could spend 300-400 quid and bag an award in the smaller sizes. It has been done. I speak from experience with that, and we've had, my brother has sold fish to customers. I've sold fish to other dealers in the past, and yeah, they've delivered on that. It's very rare. You've got to be very savvy, and you're going to be talking at really small size classes with that.
That's
but
me out there, isn't it?
it is doable. But to be honest with you, yeah, I mean, some of the prices some of these fish go for, I've seen fish for 15 centimeter size classes selling for over $8,000 in the past. It's real. That is what you're butting up against, because there's some real cold hard show assassins out there who literally will be happy to spend that kind of money to just potentially win that size class or win the best prize in that size class. They don't care that fish has no future, that it might not last another 6 months. They're happy to pay it to try and win that particular award and move on from there. I think when people,
no opinion, but they do harm to the hobby. They do.
You what? Sorry.
I think people like that who have only short-term goals are damaging to the hobby. Personally, that's me.
No, that's fair. You see, personally, I see that one as in it's in that particular world. It's in the show world.
Yeah. And
that is what it's like. It's what we're competing against. But you have to be sat. It doesn't always mean that these people are the best, are the smartest. There's fish I've known in the past. I've picked up at farms where I have been that confident it would win a first prize or beyond. It's the reason I bought and committed to it, not for crazy sums of money. I've done it, and from experience, and they've gone on and done it, So, and that they've come up against fish that have been bought and sold for serious money as well. So the Japanese judging scene's really, really, really interesting, and the show scene is. But yeah, you can compete, but it's not something you can do for very small sums of money.
No.
Because the show fees alone, as I sort of shared last week, the show fees, entry fees are considerable. You're probably talking around £100 just to enter one fish into the smallest size categories.
You were saying something like £1,000.
Yeah, up on the bigger ones, it can be over £1,000. Yeah, well over in some cases, just to enter one fish into them bigger categories. So, but again, that's the way the show's supported. It's supported by the people entering, as opposed to the commercial side of it. So, yeah, interesting model.
I've got this one. It's a headbanger for me. There's so many treatments out there, but there are hundreds of ways of using the treatments. What is your general advice?
With medications?
Yeah, medication or treatments.
Yeah, so I don't think, I'm not sure where you're coming from with different ways of using it.
Well, fluke soap, for flukes, whatever.
Yeah.
We're coming into the season of it, but you can buy it, and you can buy it from 3 different places, and you have 3 different advice, and none of them marry up to each other. And when
yeah,
it's okay if you, like mine, that cost me £100 if at most. If you've got 2.5 grams fish running around, and well, she's my ex-missus now, but she'd be hitting me with a bloody rolling pin.
That unfortunately, man, I don't think this is unique to the koi world. I think it's in any industry where you get those differences of opinions. Opinions are formed based on a person's knowledge and experience. Yeah. I think from your side of the fence as consumers, you have to get good at figuring out who are the right people to listen to. Plain and simple. I think that's the toughest thing, and you've got to learn to sort of see through. There can be some right charlatans out there at times who are just giving advice, regurgitating information as well. That's one of the scariest things I see, because you get these so-called experts come forward, or people that can dress something up well without truly understanding it. That's a problem, and that's a problem with advice, because certainly in the koi world, there's so many variable factors to consider. You've got to go case by case and truly understand. And the only way you can truly understand as the person giving the advice is from having a big pool of experience to draw from. And coming back to what we discussed at the beginning, that time at the shop for me was the biggest and most important part of my journey and the experience gained, because, like I say, we'd have somebody who was coming in and describing some symptoms, and we're having to pick through, so my fish has died. Right, great. That's the starting point. Then we've got to try and reverse engineer the whole journey to try and figure out how we've got to that point, and try and figure out all the variables in between. And nobody very often gives you the full story either. And that's where experience even starts kicking in. So all of a sudden you think something's not adding up here. What am I not being told? And that happened many a times. And then we have the whole scenario where we're having to work out, we give dosage information, dosage advice. And then you ask somebody, what's the volume of your pond? And the amount of times I had people stood in front of me who would start pacing it out. It's from the counter to that shelf there. It's up to my waist deep. And I'm like, God, and then we've got to figure out from that, that's probably not safe to give this person potassium permanganate to go and use, because they're probably going to wipe all the fish out. So which level of treatment do we give them? Because you've got stuff that like Blagden Water Gardens used to make, for example, which, the treatments were kind of spread out, diluted down a bit. The medication wasn't as strong because they knew their market. And to someone who don't really know what they're doing, they've got less chance of wiping all the fish out with a medication like that. I've still got it now. Speaking of potassium permanganate, I would never come on here and advise the dosages that I've used on that treatment to actually get the full impact of it. This is the unfortunate thing we find ourselves in, because I know if I just come on here, blanket say, you know, I've just used potassium at this dosage rate, somebody is going to copy that without having the expertise to manage a batch of fish through that treatment, know the signs, know when it's gone too far, know if they need to intervene. And next thing you know, there's people going to have destroyed their collection of fish. So that's why a lot of the times it's easier to kind of keep stum on that side of things as well. And also, yeah, Paul mentioning there, you know, the legal burden. It's another thing, but understanding that, you know, when you're giving free advice, it's not so much of an issue. But for me, it's just understanding the impact the advice can have, like I say, without all the variables in it. You know, medications work differently in different waters, different hardnesses. There's just so much. And like you say, ultimately what you're going to come up against is the experience of the person you're dealing with at that time.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, they might have done something that works for them. This is, I think, something we touched upon in the podcast that me and Joe did that come out this week. You know, I've often come up against people who have, you know, not lacked the fact that I'm a young whippersnapper, you know, back in my early days of it. And I come up against it. I've kept koi for 30 years. That old saying just used to frustrate me so much, because it's, to me, what have you actually done in those 30 years? Because if you've had 25 of them that's been absolutely plain sailing and 5 where not a lot really happened, you've not really learned a lot, have you? Because the experience comes from the failures, in my opinion. Yeah. You know, and my God, have I had a shitload of them? Absolutely, heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps. And not only then my failures, it's been the failures of customers, mistakes of customers, you know, just huge, vast networks and pools of knowledge and feedback coming back. So, interesting one.
I think even your eyes are open when Just come over and told you what the rates he uses it.
Yeah, completely. I mean, this is what we
blown away with it.
There's too many people out there that we can't seem to get into to get the knowledge out of, because where I'm at, my true specialist skill set is in the fish, is the understanding, the growth, the development, selection. That's been the bit that's always really buzzed me. But that's not to say I have to learn a shitload of stuff about everything else. That's obvious. But then there's other people in the industry who have those true specialist skill sets in areas, like Jasper at EA with his technical knowledge of bacterias and filtration and all that stuff. Harvey at EA as well, you know. And then you've got Koi Health people. I'm sure that there's loads of them sat out there, but actually finding them and getting them to come forwards is a bloody nightmare. And trust me, because we're trying all the time. But hey, there we go. You know, if every small win we can get is important. So
it must be hard if you drag me out of the cobwebs to come on.
Brilliant. Well, Marston, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to spend a bit of time now just firing through some of tonight's questions. And appreciate your time, buddy. It's been a nice chat and some questions I weren't expecting.
I like to please.
Magic. Well, thank you, buddy. And please tune in tomorrow and feel free to quiz
tomorrow
if you want.
Mr. Tate will be waiting for me, no doubt.
Cool. Nice one. Cheers, buddy.
Great.
Thank you. There we are, folks. Enjoyed that. Come at that from a really nice angle. So, right, let me just see what we've got into tonight's questions. Let's have a look. Sean Leonard, this one coming quite early from Sean. Evening, buddy. Hi, Ricky. What do you think of the Nexus 320 on 100 litres of K1? And is it a different beast on 300 litres? Yeah, absolutely, buddy. There's no, it's a no-brainer there. If you look at the potential feed levels that you're going to get there, I've spoke about this a lot with stocking levels just recently. You know, your feed level difference between 100 litres and 300 litres, it's obviously 3 times the capacity. So it's going to be absolutely vast. Having that space, if you can afford it, max it out. Just bear in mind, you're going to need probably the biggest air pump to drive 300 litres. I think you'll be around the 120, 150, or 130, 150, whichever it is, to actually drive that amount of K1 effectively, because you do want to make sure it's all boiling really well. So, go for it by all means. Wayne Evans, are there any red flags you look for when picking young kohaku that could point towards potential shimmies? Wow, right, potential shimmies. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with this is the ones that are most prone to it, from all my experience, tend to be the ones with the more intense Benny type. Yeah, I can't say any other than that, really. There's no real way of knowing. Even lineages that are pretty good in one body of water can be different in another body. So, but in general, the very rich, intense Benny types, just in general, are harder to look after, but do tend to attract shimmies. So that's just going to have to be a choice. But ultimately, you know, it's a case of trial and error with your pond. You try a bloodline, see how you get on, because literally what works for one might not work for you. So yeah, it's the best advice I can give on that one for you. Colin Holland, good evening, buddy. Eric, I know you'll have problems like any koi keeper. Would be good to see you treating some koi so we can learn how to treat and look after our koi. This is a minefield, I know. Yeah, it really is, buddy. And to be honest with you, I think it's just like I've explained with Marston. A lot of this would be a case of please do as I say and not as I do. Because for loads and loads of reasons, to be honest with you, with that one, but mainly being, you know, a lot of the time, some of the things I do, it's because I know that the experience of being around it is there to pull back any potential problems. And yeah, I mean, treatment of koi, other than obviously the regular medications that have to be given, there's not a lot more we get up to up there, to be honest with you, because the kind of, you know, split fins has been one of my biggest issues the past few years, which is purely down to stocking levels at times as well. But yeah, other than that, you might get the odd fish. We really don't get a lot with kind of scale damage or anything that needs seeing to. But a lot of the time, experience tells me to leave it alone. You know, unless I can see there's dead tissue there or anything, or we've got a dead scale that needs removing, something like that, just leave it alone, because it's a lot of the time it's just understanding why something like that's happened. You know, in the past, weirdly, I've had heavily stocked ponds when we've used the automatic feeders that use the dropper, for example, that sit on a wall, so they're quite flush to one of the pond walls. It first happened with a batch of Ginrin showers that I had, and just weirdly, I installed a load of these feeders at the same time, and almost simultaneously did I get these huge, you know, batches of fish with, you know, big clumps of raised scales, but they weren't raised as in infected. This was always the weird thing. And sure enough, as I was watching the fish behavior, obviously as they do, they'd learned how to learn where the feed was coming in. You know, this big batch of fish was spending all of its time in this small area of the pond. And when they fed, they was pummeling the side of the wall, stacking three or four fish high. And before you know it, it was bound to happen. We removed the feeders, left them well alone. Within 2 or 3 weeks, everything had sat down and we were away with that one. So, yeah, it's probably not an area that, to be honest with you, from actually watching what we do, you learn that much from. But it is an area we're aware people want more on. So through Koi Talk magazine, we're going to try and bring as much of that as possible to help you guys out. So if you're not subscribed, please make sure you are, so you don't miss out on that stuff. Crafty, good evening, mate. Have you ever thought of writing an autobiography? I jokingly say every time I end up doing something daft or whatever it is. So that's another one for the book I'm going to write in later years. But no, a few people have mentioned it, and I do fancy a crack at doing a koi-based book, but finding the time to fit that one in, yeah, God knows if it'll ever happen. But wait and see, mate. I'm sure it'll be good fun at some point. Richard H. Hi. I have a question. Is it possible for a fish to be infected with a bacterial infection to have been passed apparently heat? Sorry, Richard, I'm going to drop that one off. Just come back to me on that one and actually rephrase that, because I'm missing. I don't know if I'm missing a part of that to answer it accurately. Terry O'Connell, be interested to know what your thoughts are on having a greenhouse pond tunnel over my pond. What would the downside be, as it's mainly to keep the pond stable? Yeah, this is actually something I'm playing around with, this idea, trying to think how we could approach this from a content perspective, because for me, I can only see positives from it. The one bit I will not consider, because it's just not the way my head's wired, is obviously for a lot of people, the aesthetic of the pond in the garden is a massive part of the hobby. And that's something I overlook with the sort of fish first mentality. It's about everything that's right for them. So for us in the UK, this would be massive, because the biggest thing you're going to get is the free heat in summer, and you will get 5 to 6 months at those magical temperatures, I can promise you. Even with a smaller tunnel, my first pond was in a 20-foot polytunnel, I think it was, just quite a small one. And you got that magical heat in the summer. You get a bit more insulation in the winter. You also, obviously, it makes it that indoor thing where you've not got to cover flush to the surface. You can actually go in. But I completely understand, for a lot of people, that's just going to be an absolute no-go. I do get that. But if it's something you are able to do and don't mind having a greenhouse there, go for it, because the benefits will be vast. And I think it will completely change the hobby for you, especially if you're into raising fish as well. It'd be an absolute game changer. And who doesn't want, the magical water temperatures for a longer period and all the benefits that can come from it. All right, there we go. Dave Gardner. Hi, everyone. Don't want to hijack. Just to make you aware, Koi Waterborne auction is going ahead this Sunday, and all proceeds will be going to Keith's wife and children. That's amazing, and you guys know where I'm at with any stuff like this, so that sounds like something that'll definitely be worth supporting for such a cause. And thanks, Dave, for making us aware of that one. Rory O'Donnell, will a koi that's damaged Benny down to white ever recover the colour? Yeah, that's an interesting one, and again, there's no straight answer to it. If it goes too far, it's going to be hard, especially on the head. Body's a little bit different. On the head, it can be quite easy. If it goes too deep and it damages it, it's going to be tough, but it's not impossible. It can, and certainly with certain Benny types, when they're very thick and intense Benny, and the fish is still of a relatively decent age, there's a good chance it can recover. It takes time. I have seen it recover. I've had fish that I thought had gone too far, and it's recovered. So it really can be case by case. On the body, it's more likely, because what's going to happen on the body generally is if you're going to get damage, you're going to lose scales and not actually damage the skin underneath or on top or underneath where the pigment is. So as the scale grows back, the colour should naturally come back with it. No concerns with that. It's just the head area that's a little bit different. So yeah, pay attention to that. But yeah, generally, I think your chances are high, providing it's not gone too far, which at that point you might be struggling. And I've had it in the past. I still remember once having a 4-inch pipe exiting a filter into a pond, and before we'd had a chance to catch it, the fish had just been going mad in it, and a tancho scraped the vast majority of its spot off of its head. And yeah, that was never to come back. That was a good fish as well. It was pretty devastating. So that was an early lesson learned many years ago. Yeah, good question. Far more koi. I understand shimmies happen far more in hard water. Is that so, Rick? Again, it's been said, we can see it, but I think your focus mainly needs to be on the Benny type, because, and again, how do we find hard water? This is something else I've mentioned. You go hard water, soft water, but then again, they say sumi shouldn't develop in soft water, or it doesn't develop as well in soft water. Yet, like I've said, I've got customers who can't keep shisui in soft water. So I don't think it's just hard or soft. It's more the actual makeup of the water behind it. A lot of stuff we can't see, and how that's all formed together, and stuff that there's not really a lot of information for. So yeah, I wouldn't put it down too much to that. And I really would focus more on, like I say, just paying attention to the Benny type, because from what I've seen over the years, that's a lot more of the reason. So there we go. And shimmies, to be honest with you, I mean, just based on what I've got going on, it's not something I have to deal with a lot. And there's some pretty intense lineages there. The whole Danichi stuff is an intense Benny, one of the most intense. And yeah, there's been 2 or 3, but it's not really that bad. Benny Goys, prime example. Benny Goys, it's all Benny, and they can be a bit of a nuisance with it, but they are more prone to it naturally. So there you see there, more that's about variety and a bloodline as opposed to hard or soft water. So, and I think they'd be the same anywhere. Right, Richard has come back to us, so let's have a reread of this. Sorry, Ricky, pressed the wrong button. I'm asking, is it possible for the breeder, wholesaler, and dealer to miss bacterial infection, as that infection does not show itself until weeks later in the pond? Yeah, absolutely. But this is obviously what quarantine protocols are for, buddy. Certainly from the bit where you say, oh yeah, breeder, wholesaler, dealer, it's our job to identify this stuff, because there's not a period whereby if I take our 4-week quarantine, basic 4-week quarantine, if there is a bacterial product present, I absolutely know we will bring it out in that time span. No doubt about it, because that's what we do with the mixing and naive fish. Then there's the testing and everything else. We are going to identify it, because there's no way an active infection, if I received fish from a breeder that was sat there dormant with an infection, the stress factor of moving that to my place, certainly at the point of then mixing it with naive fish, would bring it out in either group very, very quickly. That I'm assured of. So, yeah, it can be absolutely, but for sure, you're going to have a dealer who is worth their weight in gold, is going to prevent that kind of stuff passing through the chain and into your pond. And you've seen me talk about bacterial infections and how much focus I pay to it, even, stacking it in line with notifiable diseases such as KHV. It's that serious, because it's that complex and deadly when it kind of gets into an environment. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, but it could happen. But, there should be, let's say, in quarantine, it's not just about letting them have a breeze for however long it's being done for. We've got to induce stress to try and force these problems out. But then it also goes right back to understanding the source of the fish and where they're coming from. So from our dealer's perspective, who are dealing with us, they know. They spend time walking around my facility. They know they struggle to find a fish with a raised scale. So you've got that element to it. They know I'm doing things properly. And when it comes to the breeders, I know of breeders who are red flagged, in my opinion. They're high risk, and we stay the hell away from them because it's not worth the risk. And that's exactly what we do. I know them breeders from past experiences. One of them, absolutely fine. We brought a box of fish in many, many years ago. And I'm not going to lie, I opened the box. I saw active bacterial infections on those fish. Yeah, we put them all to sleep on the spot. As a dealer, that was an expensive thing to do because there's not really much comeback. But we culled the lot of them there and then, disinfected absolutely everything in sight, and moved on from that one, because you just cannot risk even getting into the water body. You just don't want it. It's a complete zero tolerance approach. And I've not been back to that breeder since, and then just even amongst the community, I go there, I see the fish, I know what's happening. I've got history with all these guys. I know their track records. I know what's safe and what's not, and who is and who isn't. So that's where biosecurity starts. I've discussed that in the past. It's right back at source and understanding who you're dealing with and what's happening, and then your own protocols and understanding that, making sure everything is pristine. And then if you are in a position as a dealer or a breeder or wholesaler, when you've got a problem, there's that moral obligation to halt it. And you've got to go into a biosecure lockdown, especially with stuff like that, because with the best biosecurity in the world, trust me, stuff still gets about. It's remarkable how it does, unless each pond was in its own dedicated fish house locked away, which is just an impractical thing to do. Yeah, it's crazy, but you can't risk moving a fish out of that kind of environment into another, even if it looks healthy at that point. You've got to go into complete lockdown. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, buddy. Right, one more we're going to go with, folks, before I wrap it up for this evening. So, here we go. This one's coming up a bit. So, Ricky, if Saki Akari stopped producing, what food would you first go to? My God, yeah, I mean, I'd be devastated for a start. So that would be the first thing. And this would be a hard decision, because obviously I know instantly anything I'm doing is going to be a massive, massive downgrade. However, if I was in that position, being completely frank about it, The food that I used previous to this was Coppens. But like I've said in the past, I was a big advocate of that food, but they went and tinkered and did some stuff I'm really not happy with in regards to protein sources and stuff like that. Certainly in the main diet, I was using the growth food. Other than that, up to that point, I was a very big advocate of it. I don't know where it's at currently because I've stopped even following it over the past 2, getting on for 3 years now. But, before that, I had a lot of good things to say about it overall. And to be honest with you, the other one in the past, from all the years I've had a pleasant experience with, was Takazumi. So if I had to choose, it'd probably be between one of those two, but I'd have to go back to the drawing board and probably use both to actually see the outcome and see the results from it, to be honest with you. So, that would be the one. I know people's been pushing on that. I even had Matt from Howie's Koi came to see me earlier this week, and even he was pushing me on that one. He said, what else would you use? And, it's not for me. You will notice by now, I don't just go promoting anything. I go with stuff I generally use, swear by and stand by. There's nothing else swaying that ever. And I've got to truly believe in something to recommend it. So, I can't say in the past I truly believed in Coppens food. I'm not going to lie about that, because how I kind of looked at what they did, they were the manufacturer. It was their own recipe from all the research as well. They put a lot into R&D on their diets, and it was working great. Like I say, come along and for whatever reason, change the protein source. And I knew the food had changed. We opened one bag and the color of the pellet was different and the smell was completely different. So that's how used to using it I was. I noticed that straight away and then picked up on the change. Like I said, I don't know if they changed any others. I only used to use growth and spirulina primarily, and the health diet that they did, which was a pretty good food for winter, to be fair. And like I say, Takazumi, but I've only used it a couple of times over the years. So but that's that one. Like I say, I always think it's good to draw on other dealers' experiences with this one, because they know, not always, but a lot of them, you see what they're using in the shops, what they're actually using, not just what they're selling and recommending, because that can often be tainted. Not by everyone. A lot will often sell what they recommend and personally use because it just makes sense. And I know that mentality is shared by a lot of dealers. So, interesting one. And say there's going to be loads and loads of opinion on that one. But when you boil it down, like I say, one day it'd be good to get some data to actually try and prove the true value of foods, looking at all the other things, not just breaking it down price per kilo, but what you actually get in regards to the conversion ratio and weight gain for what you're paying, because only there will you truly understand the value, the true cost of a food. Who knows? One day we might get to that one, but I'm not making any promises. Right, folks. There we go. That was a killer hour. I really, really appreciate everyone who's tuned in. I know there's a lot more here now than there was at the beginning. So just to sort of restate what I was on about, we're going to be having a schedule change with the live content. So our Tuesday evening live auction is still going to go ahead as scheduled. But this is actually going to be the last live episode of Question Time for the foreseeable future. Just made that decision because I think for me personally, I'm just ready for a bit of a change and mixing it up. Really enjoying the Koi Talk live episodes that we're doing with that group, and want to focus on that for a little while. So we're actually going to be, like I say, this is going to be the last live episode of Q&A. We are working on a format to help keep bringing your questions. So we're going to be doing something with Koi Talk you'll see soon, where you can keep getting in touch and giving ideas to steer content through the Koi Talk live episode and the magazine and bits and bobs. But you're also going to see a lot of this content becoming as individual videos on the Koi Wholesale channel. So there's that resource there for everybody to keep going back, rewatching the same questions without having to trudge through an hour-long video to find a snippet that you want to find. So keep your eye out for that. I think you'll find it very, very useful. And I just want to thank everybody who's been tuning in over the last 58 episodes of this and made it a great success. certainly enjoyed it. But like I say, just feeling like we need a bit of a change at the moment, and it's not that we're disappearing. Like I say, just having a bit of a jiggle around. So Koi Talk Live will be on tomorrow night at 7 as planned. Then and from next week that will move to Wednesday, but you'll see all that scheduled anyway. So yeah, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. And like I say, I'm not sure I'm actually going to be on the live tomorrow because of family commitments at home. I'm sure Chris will be happy to take charge with the gang. So look forward to everybody tuning in to that one. So see you soon.